Good afternoon. Thank you for coming along at the end of a long day. Hope you're not quite as tired and as jaded as I am, but we'll try and get going. I've got two apologies to make. First is I apologise for the fact that you may have come this afternoon expecting it to be the other Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, so forgive me for that. And the second apology is around the fact that I'm not a CIO, I'm a CDO, and so I'm talking to the dark side, I'm talking to the other side, depending on how you see it. We'll play a bit of that game as we go along today. I was looking in the programme this morning that out of roughly 100 people here, 12 of us have data or analytics in our name. So put up your hand in the room if you have data, analytics, or you are datary and you're here. So we're probably slightly overrepresented for the people who are in this room from the whole conference. So let me ask another question. How many of you in this room, in your organisations, have a CFO? Hands up. 100%, nearly, 100%. How many of you got a CDO, a Chief Data Officer? Look at that, wow. Now this I find absolutely fascinating. If you want to do this, if you want to turn data into actionable insight, first question I was asked, don't you need a Chief Data Officer? Don't you need somebody who can look right across the organisation, can look at managing data, can look at governing data, can look at turning data into actionable insight? If data is the new oil, and I don't like that phrase, but if it is, and it's an asset, surely you'd have a specialist looking after that asset for the whole organisation. That's the first point I would make. Context of why I'm at Southern Water and why they need a Chief Data Officer. Before we start talking about, because you need a context as to what actionable insight could a water company possibly need from its data. Prior to being at Southern Water, I was the first head of data, Chief Data Officer at the pensions regulator. So I came from regulation in the civil service, and I went to Southern Water purely because of these stats here. The data is so interesting, it was just an opportunity I couldn't turn away from. The technology is a whole nother question. The legacy technology is a real challenge to the organisation and a real challenge to me in what I need to do. But in terms of turning data into actionable insight, I could play with customer data, got 4.5 million customers. I could play with our employees' HR data. We've got 2,090, near 3,000 actually employees. We've got 1,500 contractors in our supply chain and strategic partners. We invest £1.8 billion every 5 years, roughly, in our infrastructure. That's before we get onto our physical assets and the amount of data that is in our physical assets. And I'd never played with geospatial assets before. Assets fixed in place on the map, on the ground, under the ground. So that was a real interest for me. So the opportunity for actionable insight within this data is endless. I could be here for another 50 years and not even finish playing with the potential in the data. Why? Why would we want to have actionable insight in the data? What is my purpose? Why did our CEO and board decide that they were going to be the first water company in the UK to have a Chief Data Officer? And I think that these 4 points here probably go across any industry, any sector, whether it's government, private sector, transport, water, energy. And I think the first one is regulation. I think any organisation that's in a heavily regulated sector may well get to a point where they think we need somebody to manage and govern our data. Now, like you have a CFO who looks after your financial reporting and your accountancy either to the board or to shareholders, you probably need somebody to look after your data for the regulators. Secondly, for a competitive edge for customers, I'm sure many of you are in fast-moving consumer goods or retail-facing, customer-facing, and using the data for actionable insights will give you that competitive edge around the customer, whether it's customer acquisition, customer life cycle, customer value, customer retention, understanding customer churn, whatever it is. I think that actionable insights are motivated by that. Thirdly is operational efficiency. How can we run our businesses more efficiently from the actionable insights in the data? And I think a lot of executive leadership teams are getting to that point. Do we know we're running optimally? There must be something in the data that's going to show us the answer. And I think finally, and this all goes around with big data and artificial intelligence, and everybody else is at it, so it's that fear factor. Shouldn't we be doing this? So Those are the motivations as to why you might want a chief data officer and you might want to actually start thinking about actionable insights. How? How do you turn data into actionable insights? Well, of course, number one is you need a me. I'm not pitching for a job here from anybody, but you need a chief data officer. And I was presenting at an event last year, and we'd spent all of this time talking about the amazing actionable insights that you could get from data in construction and in energy and in water. And somebody from the audience said, that's all very well. But if you actually think about the mess that is the data in our organisation, how do we get from mess data to actionable insights? How do we get from A to B? And my answer to that, very first off, was you probably need one of these. You probably need somebody who's got their hand on the tiller and is actually going to steer you through that course to getting actionable insights from that mountain of data you've got. We've all got mountains of it, absolutely bucket loads of it, all over the place. So you need that horizontal controlling mind to actually start that ship on the right course. This was something that was touched on this morning. I made a couple of notes with John and Cal and Adrian, who were on earlier on, about engaging with the business. And this is my second point. How do you get actionable insights from the data? I can't come up with the questions of the business. The business needs to come to me or my team with the question. I'm not operational. I've only been in water 11 months. I don't know what it is they want to answer. I don't know what it is they want to ask. So to get actionable insights, I need to have the right question. I might produce some sort of insight that is completely fascinating, might look beautiful as some sort of visualization, might be an art piece, but actually is not telling us anything of any use for the business. The business has to ask the right questions. Very early on at Southern Water, I attended an off-site away day with customer service, and I sat down there and they were talking about predictive analytics around customer, and I was just listening to the conversation going on, and I thought, hang on, they're talking about customer. What they really wanted was a single customer view. They were saying our CRM system's rubbish, we don't have a single customer view, we've got it here, we've got it there, we've got it everywhere. We don't really know what our customer is or how to contact them with any certainty or how they're behaving. And I actually said, my observation here after a week is you're not actually mature enough to understand what the question is that you're trying to ask around predictive analytics. You're focusing on the technology and actually getting a single customer view. Perhaps we'll fix that first. So, in a way, I hope the next point is almost the next point, it's the one after this. To turn data into an actionable insight, you have to get the data. You have to make sure you've got the right data. And I would predict that most of us have probably got the right data. The problem is we might not be able to find it for a number of reasons. We've got too much data. Absolutely, as I said, buckets of it, too much of it. And it's like a colleague of mine, Caroline Carruthers, she talks about, if you're a hoarder, and you've all seen these TV programs about hoarders, and they hoard and hoard and hoard newspapers in their house. They can't move around the house for the newspapers. How can you find the newspaper you really want? There's just too much stuff to find your way round to what you actually want. So getting the right data and keeping the right data. Critical data elements is what it's all about. What is the data that's actually going to give you the insight into running your business? The fourth one is what I was referring to a moment ago, is managing and governing data. And I've just come from a session talking about data strategy, and one of the key threads of a data strategy for me is around creating data governance. If we want to get actionable insights from data, we've got to manage that data really well. We've got to store it somewhere safe. We've got to govern it so it's not going off into multiple silos and changing, with finance perhaps taking a whole cut of data and doing something for finance with it, and then perhaps procurement taking a whole cut of data, doing something with it over here, and customer doing something with it over here. All get to the board, they're all talking about the same figure and it's different. Because nobody understands how they did the transformations at the various stages. Nobody's really checked about the governance around perhaps the macro or the VB they're using to transform that data. Let's face it, they'll be doing it in the spreadsheet probably. So managing and governing data is probably one of the first steps to getting actionable insight. The only caveat I'd put around that is perfect can be the enemy of good. And very often, striving for the perfect data set will delay you in actually delivering some insight that may be of value. So understanding where you draw that line between good and perfect so you can then move forward and start doing some predictive analytics or some form of analytics to give insight is quite an art, quite a skill. And that's probably why you need somebody who's going to make a decision, a CDO. Somebody's going to make that decision between perfect and good. When are we ready to go? When can we move forward on this? Do I really understand my governed data? Do I understand the quality of my data to the point where I can actually say to somebody who's going to pass it off to a regulator and say, I can put an 88% health warning around that. That's good to 88%. There's some errors in there. I might know where they are, but we're good to go with that. The next point is to get the actionable insights, your data has to be timely and it has to be accessible. There's no point in having data hidden away in a siloed database somewhere that you can't get at it. I could tell you about a government department, not the one I worked in, but another one, who had to pay a fortune every time they wanted to get big data sets out of some of their data systems. They had to pay big money to Capita, I think it was at the time, to get that data. That is a barrier to getting your data, to getting their data. So having access to data is crucially important. And the session I've just come from, I was describing that something I'm trying to build at Southern Water is a data layer, a data reporting layer, away from perhaps the operational business warehouse, something away from the operational middleware layer that's integrating the operating systems. Drop the data out so we can have it. Great conversation with IT. I want the data. You tell us which bits you want and we'll let you have it. No, I want all the data because I want to play around it. I want to get into it. I want to get dirty. Then it's accessible. I can get in there. I can have my data science teams, my analytics teams doing work in there without getting in the way of operations. And it's accessible. Timely, trying to work out how often you want that data cut or you want that delta feed. We only take meter readings every 6 months. So why would I want a cut every day? I want a cut of those that have been read in their 6 monthly cycle. So it's understanding what timely is in your context is really important. Timely and accessible brings you into the great V words of data. You start thinking about velocity, variety, veracity, and volume. Those are really, really important things to understand about your data if you're going to move into insights. And then Agile Delivery, something again we've been talking about this afternoon, a couple of conversations I've had around the place over cups of coffee today, is around Agile Delivery. I think the thing that makes data really special is that ability to give quick results. And anything in my mind, and it's only a kind of rule of thumb, and I talk to my heads of who report into me, anything that the business is asking us to do that is over 3 weeks probably isn't our domain. We should be talking with IT about that. Anything under 3 weeks, we can deliver really quickly into the business. And one reason it's got to be agile is if you don't respond to the business need, that business question, if you train them to ask the question, if you don't meet the demand, they'll go and do their own thing. They'll get the spreadsheet out again. So you've delivered them a fantastic dashboard in Tableau or ClickView. Absolutely wonderful. They want some changes made to it. If you don't make those changes quickly, do you know what they'll do? Absolutely right. They'll download it into Excel and go back to doing what they were doing before. And they thank you for producing this great tool for exporting to Excel. So you have to be agile. If you want to be the person who helps them get actionable insights, you have to respond in an agile manner. And finally, I think to get those actionable insights, you have to have a data team. You have to have a team who is there, who is mobilized, who is skilled up to give those actionable insights, who understand the difference between MI, BI, predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, artificial intelligence and machine learning. You can't expect that to be in the business. They should be the people who are the center of excellence for these things. So building a data team, I think, is really important to getting those actionable insights. I'm going to stop saying that in a minute. Finally, and I had a conversation just over a cup of coffee now about this, I'm struggling at the moment with the difference, well, I understand difference, but struggling between the value of a proof of value and a minimum viable product. And I find it very, very easy to show the business art of the possible. You can get any of the suppliers in, they'll all happily come in, whether it's water supply chain suppliers or whether it's Burst, Tableau, Power BI, whoever it is, they'll all come in, they'll do a proof of value for you on a piece of data set. It looks absolutely wonderful. The business goes, that's fabulous, we'll have one of those. They say, yeah, hold on. Actually, we've now got to take all of that down and we've got to rebuild it as an operational thing, because that was a proof of value. That is no use. If you want to give actionable insights, you have to be thinking ahead as to, right, they've asked me the question, I want to show them it's possible. How am I going to do this in a mode that I can operationalize it really quickly? Because I don't want to take it away from them. And so at the moment, I am a big fan of minimum viable products. Something that actually will work on a nasty, grotty, unpolished state, but will work and actually answer some of the questions and will show not only that it's worth the investment, but you can operationalise it very quickly. You're not going to disappear for another 3 weeks and come back later with something that works. Graham and I were talking about this yesterday. He came up with a great example about the garden shed. The business asks you to build something, you do a POV, proof of value, proof of concept, and it's a wooden garden shed. And then they say, it'd be great if you did this, 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 and this, and this, and this. And Graham said, yeah, what you actually wanted was a house, not a shed. And I thought that was a really good analogy. So, wrap all of those up into one big thing. How do you get actionable insights? You have a data strategy. So, thinking about what's in a data strategy, it's probably kind of those things. Makes sense? Lots of MVPs. Your immediate data strategy, the things that are going to hit business value really quickly, solve some of the pain, wrap it up into a data strategy. A data strategy is made up of a number of things. People, processes, and technology, of course, with data sitting at the heart of it, in my mind. And this is very much what we've done at Southern Water. We've addressed the people by bringing people together to form a skilled data team. And people ask me quite often, well, if you're building a data team, do you recruit? Or how do you find people to go into your analytics team or your data science team? And we very much took the approach that if we could find those skill sets within our existing people in the organisation, or if we could upskill people, that would be better than recruiting new people, because the people in a business understand the data. They understand the questions around the data. They probably understand the data quality really well, or the lack of data quality. So we went on a path of retraining people and upskilling people into those data skills, but bringing them together in a data team. I was explaining earlier on that at Southern Water we actually did a lift and shift of people from across the business into the data team because they were so siloed across the business. They were out there in lots of silos, repeating the things, all extracting data, all working in spreadsheets. I mentioned earlier on 2,500 different reports in spreadsheets, 116 people playing with data. So bringing those people together enabled us to actually create a centre of excellence, a data team who are working effectively and efficiently to deliver actionable insights to the business. One of the things I was trying to do by that is to free people up from the mundane and the BAU. If I can get people out of the BAU, if I can automate sticking those spreadsheets together, I've then got people who are skilled, who understand the data, who can then start doing the insights, can start doing the analytics. But if they're bogged down sticking spreadsheets together and playing around with Microsoft Access databases all day, they don't have that freedom of time to actually do the insight work. The second piece of that is technology. The importance of technology to delivering those actionable insights. I think you can deliver some insights with a spreadsheet. We've all done it. We've had good people with good teams who can deliver some insight with spreadsheets. But I think that there's a whole raft of what I would call data technology. This is where I'm going to lose some of the CIOs in the room, the CTOs. Data, things that are offered as a service or in a cloud environment, software as a service, which we can fire up really quickly for a particular purpose perhaps. Don't have great cost implications. You can mobilize them really quickly. You don't require a huge amount of support, perhaps from IT in terms of infrastructure. There are tools out there to get at insight very, very quickly, particularly if you've got governed and managed data sets. And you can lock them down in some of these tools, and then you can start offering self-service into the business around governed data sets. Because if we're talking about the business asking the question, they are the people who know the question. Give them governed data sets, give them easy-to-use tools, and they'll work on the data themselves. The third is processes. And to me, in terms of those processes, that's around automation. That's around actually, if we've got the people and the technology, how do we actually build delivering those insights into the business processes? How do we make, away from the spreadsheets, how do we change the reporting processes, the insight processes, to being fit for purpose and operational in a business? There is another side to this. If you start to give the business actionable insight, how are they going to change their business processes? And that's a real challenge. That's a real challenge, I think. And one of the big discussions I have with a lot of people, particularly around advanced analytics and around some of the, you might do a really interesting piece of work, and a lot of these projects fail, not because you don't get the answer, but because they don't go into operations. so therefore they fail. And one of those is because nobody's thought early on about the impact this might have on the business operation. Take my example. For example, if we got to the point where we had quite a long way down the line, you'll see in a minute, say we had managed to develop artificial intelligence to manage our water networks. We had a self-learning water network that was maintaining its own pressure and understanding from instance and occurrences and outcomes on the network. That would fundamentally change our business processes. We wouldn't need engineers turning on and off valves and understanding the impact of turning on and off valves. But unless I can operationalize that insight the artificial intelligence is giving us, it's a waste of time. Absolute waste of time. So, in the data strategy, and I apologize to people in my previous session, I think about the data team transformation. Are you going to build a data team? Are you going to build a data team together? You need people who are going to develop the managed data, the governed data, the technology, who are going to deliver the insights into the business. Where are these people going to come from? Is it going to be a matrix team, people who are out in the business who you've created a centre of excellence from and you're operating with them out in the business, or is it a whole centralised data team? You need the data technology. You need the right technology. When I arrived at Southern Water, we did when we moved 74 people into the data team, we did a capability analysis. We gave them a spreadsheet, we gave them a questionnaire to fill in, asking them what skills and language coding skills they had. We found out that in the 74 people we moved in the end, we had 12 with advanced SQL skills, and yet we had no SQL environment for them to use those skills. We had 4 who had Python and R skills, and all we'd given them was spreadsheets. So they were frustrated as hell. So when they saw a CDO turn up, they thought, wow, things might change. So giving these people the right tools, the right technology, enables them to deliver insight, real insight, very, very quickly. Data architecture. Building the right architecture in your data, either in your managed or your governed data sets or in your reporting data sets. Data processes I've talked about before, and the impact on business processes. So this is the journey that we're on, and I would think that some of you would identify with this if you think about your organisation. So this is the start of our journey over here. In fact, I lie. The start of our journey is probably somewhere over here. We haven't even got to that yet on a big scale. So this is where we want to start first. We want to get into predictive analytics. And the thing that is exciting the business is not only around doing our initial reporting and our initial regulatory reporting better and more efficiently and more effectively in more modern tools. They want to get into predictive analytics. We want to work out where we're going to get bursts, where we're going to get leaks, where we're going to get blocks, where we're going to get floods, which pump's going to fail next, and that kind of thing. Because that will have a huge impact on the business. So what I need to focus my team on is preparing, managing, collecting, managing, governing the data sets that will enable us to do this. And to do that, I talked about technology. I need the ability to do some data mining. To do predictive analytics, we've got 20 years worth of data at least that all has outcomes around flooding, around bursts. Data scientists love outcomes. A and B happen, you get C or D. So data mining can give us real insight into building predictive models. We need to blend data. We need technology that will allow us to bring in new data sets to sit with our existing data sets. Data sets that we've perhaps never thought of before. Again, perhaps the role of a CDO to think about what other data sets can we use to give us an indication, to give us a proxy of what we're trying to answer the question for. I'll give you an example that at a pensions regulator, when I was head of data there, we were trying to build, as a risk-based regulator, we were trying to build models around automatic enrolment. We couldn't possibly look at all the employers in the country to try and work out who and who wasn't paying pension contributions into their automatic enrolment pension schemes to their employees. So we started doing some analysis around other proxies. The most interesting one we came up, well, the starting point was VAT. If you have a small business that was always paying its VAT late, they probably had the same behaviour towards their pension schemes. They were either in financial problems or they just didn't take that kind of financial commitment seriously. Most interesting one was to look at in the fast food sector, where we knew that there were problems around seasonal workers, and you can flip them in and out of your requirements upon automatic enrolment with seasonal workers, and you can manipulate the system very well. We worked out that by looking at food standard ratings, that it had an impact or had a correlation to their pension contributions, whether they were paying their pension contributions on time. In other words, if you had somebody who was running their restaurant and being a bit iffy around the food standards, the model suggested they were going to be a bit iffy about paying their pensions. And then HMRC get interested, well, they're probably going to be a bit iffy about that as well. So blending data sets is really, really important. And I think that's another argument as to why you need a CDO. Somebody who's going to actually think outside of the business, understand other data sets are available, understand how you can bring them in, how you can store them, how you can transform them, how you can blend them with your existing data sets. ETL, to do all of that, you need an extraction transformation load tool. You're going to struggle to blend data sets together. How many people, I won't ask you to put your hands up, we've all been there, I've had somebody in the business who say, my spreadsheet's fallen over, it's just got too big, it can't do it. Or you've had somebody, I came across a brilliant one the other day, they were taking data out of one of our energy monitoring systems, they were taking it into Microsoft 2013 Excel, they were doing some manipulation in there, and then they had to cut and paste all of that into 2003, because that's where the macro was that David built, who had left the organization 10 years previously, and nobody understood the logic or whatever was in that. So you need to move into this kind of area. Going back to that operationalizing stuff, you have to be resilient. You have to have something that is documented, something that can operationalize quickly, that if I leave or my team leave or that there's a progression, you can understand how that logic was built and is being used. Particularly if you're giving actionable insights and the business is making decisions based on it. You need to understand the logic behind the data, behind those decisions. Storage and compute power. If you've got all of those in a magic mix, you might start doing some of this. This side is where we want to get to. This is where the real power in the data is for us, I think. This is useful, will have value. This is the future for us, certainly in the utility sector. Artificial learning, artificial intelligence and machine learning, without a doubt. So that is my quick canter through. Managing data for delivering actionable insights. I haven't talked about random forest analysis or deep Python code or anything like that. I'll do that all evening if you want me to. It's quite fun. But it's more about business. It's more about understanding how you're going to organize around the data to deliver that actionable insight and the relationship with the business. I did start off by also saying that relationship with IT is absolutely crucial. And I was describing earlier on that in our organization, the two organizations where I've held the senior data position, I sit between IT and the business. Now, one leg in business, we're talking to business about the business challenges, the business demands, what they want to see from the data, what the questions are. On the other hand, I'm sitting with one foot in IT saying, this is what we need, this is how we need to do it, this is what I would like.